Whether we're writing a story or attempting to sell products, our message must be clear, always. If you confuse, you lose. Hey, champions, welcome to another episode of Champion Reads, the podcast where we talk about best-selling books and best-selling authors and the lessons and experiences that they have to share with us. My name is William Blake. I'm joined today by our other executive producers. We have Mr. Ian Sturmer and Mr. John Kovacs Jr. And today we are going into the second part of StoryBrand, or Building a Story Brand by Donald Miller. Such a great book, really such a great book. And I'm loving reading it, and I'm loving what we're going to be talking about today. Because John, I know in the back room we were talking about the quote of if you confuse, you lose. But even you brought up something which I think is more impactful that we can go off of, which is more of the elements of an important story. So I'll turn it right over to you to start, and then we'll just have a good conversation about it.
Yeah, I was anxious and excited to learn from each of you on some of your favorite stories because as I'm reading this book, I'm seeing so much synergy and I don't know, just comparison to great stories and then using those stories um to reach people, right? And he keeps bringing up luxury car brands, for example. And the luxury car brands, they say, they have to do more than sell luxury cars. They have to tell a story. They have to basically sell they have to sell an image or a representation, a lifestyle. And those are some of the hardest things to sell, in my opinion, because, when there's a lot of one thing, that means it's selling like hotcakes and it's super easy. But when there's not a lot of one thing, it means you have to work harder. And so thinking of quantifying your sales experience or your business as a whole, because sales equals bottom line, you have to be able to work this through. So my thought was, let's take this idea and we're encouraging our listeners to read the book, and we're going to cover some areas, and I'll read through a couple of these. But I would love to ask each of you, what are some of your favorite stories, aka books, aka movies, or even TV shows? Maybe it's something that you created yourself, but I'm just curious. Like, let's talk about some of our favorite stories, and then let's talk about the elements, why those are our favorite stories. A great example I'll get into just to lead off is Lord of the Rings or The Hobbit, right? And I'll talk about the reasons why I love it, but anyways, I'll get there. But for our listeners, I want them to understand that there are elements to building a story. Every story, the ones you love, have a main character, a protagonist, an antagonist, and so forth. It has a problem. Okay, there's a problem in the story. No, unless you're watching the TV show Bluey, there's always going to be a problem. Just kidding. There's always a problem, right? They portray it in a very positive light. And then the protagonist, or the protagonist, is it the protagonist? Anyway, the main character, they meet a guide. Okay, they meet some sort of mentor, guru, a guide, the unsuspecting person to help them, right? And then that guide gives them a plan, and that plan leads them to action. So it calls them to action, and then that action and that plan and the guide help them to avoid failure. And then, of course, we all love a good ending or a good positive story ending. And whether they succeed or fail, that's what we want to know. So that's what the elements, the breakdown of a good story is. And I want to talk about our favorite stories, and then as a group, let's dissect them. If we know each other's stories, we can build off of them. If we don't, we can still ask questions. But I would just kind of like to turn this into a discussion because, yeah, our favorite stories can be related to how we portray and share and market our businesses to other people. And I think that's an interesting conversation. Would anyone like to go first, or I will jump right on into The Hobbit?
Well, go ahead and start The Hobbit. That's one
All
of
right.
my favorites too. So,
Yeah. And you know what? Admittedly, like The Hobbit was probably the first and most like exciting um fiction book I have ever read in my youth. And my mom made me forced me to read a book in the summer, and I picked up The Hobbit and begrudgingly read through it. And about halfway through, I was like, "Wow, this is good." I might be reading it very, very slow because I'm a slow reader, but I love it. And I'll kind of sum it up for most people. Most people know The Hobbit, but for those who've been living under a rock or haven't watched the movies or just don't know, a hobbit is a tiny, tiny humanoid that that resides in the Shire. And the Shire is this quaint little town. They don't stir up mischief. They just live. They farm. They have their morning tea. They have multiple meals a day. They live in just quiet solitude because they don't have any enemies, really, because no one really knows where the Shire is and no one really ventures to the Shire. So it's kind of a little protected area. Until one day, a wizard arrives, and the wizard is friends with one of the hobbits. His name's Bilbo Baggins, and the wizard uh, really shares that there's a need, there's a problem, and there's reluctance, there's all kinds of things. But the one thing that is common between the adventure that is to be had and with the problem is that Bilbo Baggins is growing tired of the Shire. He wants an adventure. He wants to do something that leads him away from the Shire. And although scary and unknowingly, like, what is outside the Shire? And one of the biggest heroic moments is when he steps foot out the door, and that becomes a really, really great story. And then comes adventure, then comes journeying, then comes problems and near death experiences, and all the long while in search of a solution or an answer or an answer to a question. And before I mix in the Lord of the Rings and bring in the story of the Fellowship and bringing the ring to the right people and stuff like that, Bilbo Bilbo goes along this adventure, and he is met by various challenges. His size and who he is, and also his stubbornness, really is something that causes him to miss out or to run into problems. But also where he's led, his adventure leads him to some of the highest mountains and some of the deepest, darkest caves, where he finds and meets characters who change the course of history of the Lord of the Rings story. And the basis and the power of this entire show, or this entire story, is, for me, the fact that nobody can have adventure without stepping outside. And so I love it. And just to give people context, I mean, he runs into everything from beasts in the fields to dragons and just things that he would never have ventured to find or see. And also there's an evil growing amongst the land through the orcs and the I forget the Middle Earth villains, and it's just awesome. So I'll wrap that up because I don't want to take everyone's time. I could really go into every detail, but there are so many character elements of it, And of your understanding of the Hobbit story, and you could even go into Lord of the Rings, if you will, what makes it exciting is that the unsuspected hero becomes a hero. The first heroic movement is discomfort and stepping into the darkness, out the door and into a world of unknown. And then we figure out what the unknowns are, and it's like, oh my gosh, why did he ever leave? Discomfort. But I think that that's important because he is the unsuspected hero. We put ourselves in Bilbo's shoes, and I guess we should say in his feet, because hobbits don't wear shoes. And yeah,
Important point.
becomes one of those, exactly. Yeah. It becomes one of those stories where it's like, okay, this is one of the greatest stories ever told. It led to one of the greatest book series ever sold. And there are elements to this story that really, really resonate because what? And what is it for you guys? What really stands out about The Hobbit that just makes it a great story for you?
Well, I was listening to what you were saying, and as you know, one of my mantras is simplify everything. So I was listening to this and simplifying, and I'm looking at my notes here. Every story is about a change that has to happen and the growth that comes from that change. And I think everything is either you want something new or you're fleeing something you don't want. You want something good or fleeing something bad. And The Hobbit starts out with Bilbo wanting something different. And, there's no story that has no change and growth in it. If you picture the story of the man who came home from work and sat down in his chair, then had dinner and went to bed and got up the next morning and went to work. That's an exciting story. There's no growth, there's no change. But Bilbo goes through wanting something different, realizing he's missing something in life and wants a change. And every one of those adventures is either moving towards that change he wants or fleeing from the bad thing happening that he doesn't want. And every step along that is another piece of growth that he goes through. And I think what gets us involved in it, there's the excitement, there's the wizards, and there's the orcs and all of these things happening. But those incremental changes, we see Bilbo getting stronger and smarter and more confident. And we fall in love with Bilbo as he does this. And we're excited to see how he grows. And I'm going to just put that back into business for a minute. Are we doing that with our customers? Are we providing them with this opportunity and seeing how they grow, seeing how they can change, seeing how their life is better? Hopefully not from running away from something, but that's advertising too. You're running away from plaque. So you're running away from gingivitis to get that new, so you can kiss the girl in the end, or you're wanting to kiss the girl in the end, so you go and grab that mouthwash. But even that, it's a story. It's a desire to get somewhere. It's a change that's going to happen with us. And when we put it into a story, we understand that. And I'll finish that point with, I love McDonald's commercials. Look at a McDonald's commercial on TV. They don't even talk about the food. They don't show the food. They don't say it's great tasting food. They show people coming together, laughing, joking, having a good time. They show people wanting to have that feeling themselves, that feeling of joy and togetherness. And it's that story of a happy family, a happy group of friends that they sell, not the need for sustenance and certain amounts of proteins and carbohydrates and, I would say, vitamins and minerals, but this is McDonald's. So we're just going to say proteins and fats and carbohydrates. That's what they're selling. But no, they're selling this story of friendship, of happiness, of joy. And this is where you can get away from the stress of life. And it's a story. It's all about the story that we have in our life. So I'll finish up with McDonald's, and now we're all hungry.
Yeah, I'm really hungry, and I'm like reaching back into my memories, and I'm wondering, there were so many different jingles that their commercials had, from "We love to see you smile" to I forget the other one, but then it's "But up." They got those ones now. So,
We're
anyways,
loving
you
it.
got me thinking. That's a really great brain opener for me.
Okay, hope there's no copyright.
I'm loving it.
Ian, that reminds me of, if anyone is like going from Utah County to Salt Lake County, and you're going over that kind of turn in the hill going northbound I-15. Homie, the real estate company, does a fantastic job with billboards, because you can only put so much on a billboard. But they did it to where they bought the only 3 billboards that I've seen on that corner. And everyone who travels on that road sees those billboards, because there's nothing but sky and mountains that you can see looking that way. And they make it into a story. So I remember I'm going to forget it. But they did like a 3-part story to it. It was, if this is happening to you, then you can do this, and we're the best people to do it. And it was like the 3 billboards, and they've done it multiple times, of where it just like tells a story. And I get excited every time I go around and I see a new thing popping up, to see like what it's coming up with. So you're right. And it's all about the way that the story is told. People get confused a lot when it comes to if we overcomplicate things. But in business, if we're able to like shrink it down to a motto or a mantra, people get behind it a lot easier than if, let's say, a website is cluttered with FAQ links and external links that lead to customer service, that lead to, like, if it's just unclear what you do, people don't want to do it, to go with it. I'm sure we can all think of a movie that was probably not your favorite movie, and more than likely it was because the storyline sucked on it. But we have some of the best movies out in the world: Lord of the Rings, Hobbit, Harry Potter, Star Wars. There's a whole story behind it, all revolving around the protagonist meets the antagonist, and they're fighting each other. That the protagonist has to go through challenges, they grow themselves, and then they always have that guide or guides to help them along the way. And that always creates some of the best stories.
We're just here nodding. Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. We're thinking of all these stories. Okay, he got me into the sci-fi, and I'm trying not to geek out here on all these things. But, every story there's a challenge you have to overcome. And I think in business, that's the same thing. And, this is about book about marketing, and we're talking about marketing strategies. And the fact is, there's not a lot of products that are out there that we market because of what the product really does. They don't say toothpaste will clean your teeth. No, toothpaste will give you a good smile so the girl recognizes you, so you get the job. It's what things do. It's the reason behind them. And stories are, I think, just how our mind works. We get excited about stories. One of the first advice I got in public speaking was, when your audience starts to look bored, tell a story. And that's probably been the most useful advice I've gotten. So whenever I'm speaking, I have on the side of my notes a list of stories that I can jump to whenever I need to. Because you start telling a story, people get interested, they get involved. Not to go religious, but I think there's not much question that Jesus is one of the most influential people in history. Any list you look at, religion aside, he's one of the most influential people in all of history. And how did he teach? Parables, telling stories. If you say, beyond, he loved the world, and if you love me, keep my commandments, the next thing everyone thinks is, oh, the story of the parable of the lost sheep, the 10 talents. It's the stories he told. because we put ourselves in those stories and we understand them. We understand the meaning and the symbolism, and they make life deeper to us than just saying, brush your teeth. Because we would all rather get the girl, right? And if we
That's right.
didn't brush our teeth, none of us would have the girls we have now.
True. Yes.
Yeah.
I do
We are all
tribute
married, for
all
those
of
in the
my
audience.
I do tribute all my love for my spouse to my toothpaste. Yes.
Colgate, thank you for what you have served us with.
Oh, I'll jump in and just say you're absolutely right, guys. And there's just so many great elements, and the conversation takes wings and legs of its own. But I'm curious, as long as the stories are easy to describe and also what's the word, relatable. Like, what are some of your favorite stories? I know we jumped into The Hobbit a little bit, but in fear of sharing too geeky of sci-fi, no, I as long as it's a common story or whatever, people might know it or could find it. I'm curious what some of your favorite stories are that we could dive into as well.
I'm going to jump in to answer there. And first, I have to say, along with Lord of the Rings, one of my favorite memes that I saw that I should have pulled up here. But if people know Lord of the Rings story, there's a picture of Gollum holding up the One Ring with this look of absolute love on his face as he looks at this ring. And the caption said, "He went to Jared." Jared. And I love that one because we know all of this adventure and this obsession he has. We all know that storyline. And it put it into a funny way, and it's not a Jared commercial. It's just an internet meme, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
But it brings all of this emotion into it. So I want to say that, but let me jump into my favorite story, and I'm in a different office today, so I don't have my Star Trek Enterprise painting behind me, but I love Star Trek. And the thing I love about Star Trek is I got thinking every vision of the future. There's only a couple visions of the future in literature and TV and movies. It's either 1984, the book where Big Brother, this authoritarian thing, takes over the world, or it's Brave New World, which is the same thing, but it's a corporate side taking over the world. Or it's A Clockwork Orange, where it's devolved into this lawless crime society, or it's the post-apocalyptic, where we've been destroyed by aliens or virus or something. And all of those are struggling to get through this death and destruction and terrible things around us, except Star Trek, that takes place after all of that, when we've conquered everything. And now we have a new hope in the future, and we're working together and we're exploring and we're creating friends and meeting people. And it's the only positive science fiction in general. I'm sure there's something out there, but it's the one positive, that we've overcome everything and there's still hope going forward. And I love that because there's always some conflict in those things. But I love the idea of a hope for it. There's a good thing out there. We're going to make it past all this bad stuff. And then life is going to be so good. We're going to overcome those challenges. And for me, that's the story I love. The challenge is nice, but I love after the challenge, the happily ever after, when there's some, Klingons fighting each other and excitement going along with it. So Star Trek is my favorite to geek out there of the storylines because of the positive hope for the future. And we can do this. We are going to conquer, and mankind is good. So.
I'll take it to my favorite story as you share yours. I have so many favorite stories. The one that came to my mind is a little more niche down into the fiction area, but Fablehaven and Dragon Watch, that series by Brandon Mull. I love it because in that series, you have two kids who go to their grandparents' house, who then learn about this whole magical world that's going on, and then they just get enthralled in it. to where the people who seem like the good guys turn into the bad guys. They have to save the place that they're at. Then they got to save other sanctuaries. Then they got to save the world from what's going on. And all while fighting off monsters, demons, and everything in between. And then eventually they're spoiler alert, eventually they were able to do it. But I love the storyline because as it goes through, it doesn't start with the big bad happening. It starts off with the place that they're in. They learn about what's going on, and then they just learn a few skills that help them overcome the challenge that they have then. Then you got the next book, which then gets a little bigger into the story. And then the next one, which gets even bigger. And then to the fifth book, where it's just like, you know, everything that's going on. All the crap is hitting the fan and the world is coming to an end. And these two people and all their friends have to go out and try to save it. We don't start with saving the world. We start with saving the people in the area that we have influence with right now. So I love that series because it starts off with like you focus on what's small, you focus on your world at the moment. And then as you get control of that, your control and influence is able to affect more and more and more. So I know for myself, I have the worst case of wanting to save the world. Where instead, what I need to do is focus on maybe my city, and then my county, and then the state, and then the country, and then maybe the world, right? We're small where I'm at and continue to grow out. But that's where the good stories come from. That's where when we hear speakers, when we hear good books that aren't fiction, that are people's lives and experiences, where we get motivated and inspired by it. And it's because they started out with what they had and then worked their way to where they're at right now.
Yeah. You jogged my memory on just a bunch of other stories, and I'll just go through a quick series of them and just share like big standouts, because it's these stories that really become a brand. So it's reverse it. So becoming a story brand, right? But what about the story in and of itself becomes a franchise or a brand or something that people recognize? Some of the most successful movies of all time, Jurassic Park, right? Whether you're human or dinosaur, the main learning point and the biggest standout here, or the biggest story, is life always finds a way. And that to this day is one of the highest grossing movies of all time. There's let's see, you brought some anime into this, so I want to share. There's Avatar: The Last Airbender. I mean, a story about a hero who failed the world and making his comeback after the world has turned, and learning to trust in both his powers, his friends, and his ability to fulfill what he didn't do before. That's amazing. I mean, it's so interesting and relatable. I think about Star Wars. You brought in Star Wars a little bit with you said A New Hope, then you talked about Star Trek, and so I was like, oh, A New Hope is the title of a Star Wars episode. But yeah, there's this idea that the Force is with you, right? And these are just like these ideas that become a brand and kind of an image. When anyone says these words like Jurassic Park, you think dinosaurs, Tyrannosaurus Rex. When you think Star Wars, you think lightsabers, and you think ships and pew pews, is what we're supposed to say. When I think of Star Trek, I think of really cool ships and alien characters interacting and mingling with other heroes and commanders and the line of succession of leadership and trust, and there's just so many elements that pop out. And so in light of me sharing all that, it's well, what's the purpose? What's the why? Well, the why is people recognize you for the stories you tell. and how you make them feel. These characters, we fall in love with these characters. Their stories, they influence us. They do something to us, and it's very, very I don't know, experiential for us. And so, as you talked about, seeing billboards of businesses and so forth, the question is what do these stories do for us, and how are those related to our businesses, and how can they be related to our businesses? I just think it's fascinating and interesting.
Stories are good. Stories are fantastic. And I know that as we're wrapping this up, the question comes to my mind: what can we do to start our own story? And maybe that's not the right question. Maybe the question is, how do we recognize the story that we're in to start moving forward with it? And I might want to leave that question, and you guys can answer it or share your final thoughts. But if I were to answer that question of how do we start, or how do we recognize the start that we have, I would say to think about what is in our own lives and what we've accomplished already. Because if the start of our story is when we're born, then for me, who's 27 right now, 28 next month, woot woot, I know that I have 28 years of experiences, of challenges, of everything that's been going on that can go to my story. And then I can think about, what do I want the ending of my story to be? And what am I willing to sacrifice to become the person who I want at the end of my story? I think those are the things that I would go into. John, Ian, I'd love to hear your thoughts as we wrap up this episode.
I'll jump in and say, I've never forgotten a slogan by the brand Mod Pizza. And whether you like pizza or you don't, pizza at Mod is comparable to certain companies. And they have a slogan on the wall that always says, we serve pizza, or we make pizza so we can serve people. And I always thought that was outstanding, because it's not about serving the literal pizza to the physical people. It's, we make pizza so that we can serve people, so we can make them happy, so we can fill their stomachs, so we can give them joy. And that's something that's always stood out to me. So as we dive deeper into this book, building a story brand, I'm making these comparisons and observing other companies and what they've done and said. And, in light of, not copying other brands and other businesses and doing or saying and using their slogans or what they have said and done, at the risk of it all, it's just showing the effectiveness of reaching you in a creative way. That's what's important to me. And I highly look forward to diving deeper into it. And I love learning from you two as well, that there are different ways to tell this story.
Yeah, I love that. And I just have to point out one thing about the story. So, William, it turns out that I am exactly twice your age right now. So I'm feeling a little old for that one.
No, you're experienced, not old. Experience.
Yeah. And well, it depends on, you're only as old as you feel. And this morning, I think I was in my 70s, how I felt. But anyway, it was an early morning. I got thinking a couple of things there. One, stories take a thing and turn it into an idea. And they build on more than just a thing. Like the Mod Pizza takes a pizza and turns it into an idea of a story and serving and what you can do. And okay, I had a great idea, and then Willie went a whole different direction. So I'm going to pull it back to my thoughts on this. Some of these great stories, and the ones that affected me the most, Luke Skywalker in Star Wars is a simple farm boy who becomes super important. Peter Parker is a simple high school student who suddenly gains powers. Fablehaven are a couple of kids who go to this place and suddenly find themselves in an adventure. Even Bilbo Baggins is just a boring guy who sits there drinking tea and making lunch who suddenly finds an adventure. All of these are the everyman. They're me. There's no chance that I'm going to be born Bruce Wayne. There's no chance that I'm going to be suddenly find I'm an alien Superman. But bitten by a radioactive spider, yeah, that could happen. That one's in the realm of possibility. I could become that hero. And I think that's part of it. When we can become the hero of a story, then they get exciting. You can watch a story of somebody else, but when you're there, I remember, it's embarrassing to say, I remember walking out of a Batman movie, and I was like feeling really tough walking out of that movie. Like, I'm ready for some bad guys to come over here so I can show them what I've learned watching Batman on the movie screen. But the stories bring you into it. They make it real. They make it alive for you. And that's, I guess, what we need to do in our lives, our business, is to make our product and service come alive for somebody, make them get involved and feel that rather than just observe it, to become part of those stories. So I think, yeah, let's all become part of an adventure story with our business and life.
Yeah, well said. What a great way to end it. And of course, we'll be able to have more time over the next couple of episodes to dive deeper into this book. But this concludes, for you champions listening, this episode. If you found inspiration in this episode, go ahead and subscribe to our podcast, Champion Reads. You can find us on all of the major podcasting platforms, as well as you can subscribe to our own social media channels, and you can find those by going to our website, www.mychampioncircle.com. And until next time, champions, continue to be awesome. Continue to be the hero of your own story, as well as guide other people in theirs. And always remember that it's just those few small steps that we take every single day to create the story that we want, whether it's in our personal life or our business. So go ahead and take those steps. We'll see you on the next episode, champions.
Thank you.